You are 6 months into a friendship with someone who seems wonderful. They are kind to you, thoughtful, exactly the sort of person you hope to find. And yet you know with absolute certainty that this person will eventually harm you. You can see the exact moment when they will turn. You know which conversation will be the turning point. You know what they will say when it happens, how they will justify the betrayal, how they will rewrite the entire history to make themselves the wronged party and you the villain. You carry this knowledge like a stone in your chest. And when you try to name it, when you attempt to warn the mutual friends who are also being drawn in, they look at you as though you have lost your mind. You are being paranoid. You are overthinking. You do not know that. And so you stop speaking. You watch it unfold exactly as you knew it would. And when it happens, when they finally see what you saw months ago, no one remembers that you warned them. They simply move on. And you are left carrying the exhaustion of being right and being alone. You are not paranoid. You are not inventing problems. You are experiencing what the oracles have always experienced. The weight of knowing what others cannot see. The isolation of speaking truth before its time. The curse of prophecy without credibility. You are living Cassandra's inheritance. And the world has been trying to silence you for the same reason it silenced her, because the truth that arrives too early is indistinguishable from madness, because those who can see endings are inconvenient to those who are still pretending beginnings will last forever. Welcome to power and myth. We have been walking through the lineages of those they tried to destroy. First, the Druids, the keepers who held knowledge for 20 years, who stood between visible and invisible worlds, who were hunted by empires that feared what they carried. Then the healers, the ones who absorbed pain no one else would touch, whose bodies became vessels for transmuting collective suffering, who were called witches and burned. Today we turn to the third lineage, the oracles, the ones who spoke what others could not hear. The prophets, the seers, the truth-tellers who were dismissed, discredited, and destroyed for the simple act of naming what was coming. If you have ever known how something would end before it began, this video is for you. If you have ever tried to warn someone and been called negative, dramatic, a prophet of doom, this video names why. If you have spent your life watching others walk toward cliffs you mapped months ago, unable to make them hear you, unable to stop speaking, even though speaking costs you everything, you are living what the Greeks called the Seer's curse, what the Romans tried to silence, what every empire that has ever existed has attempted to extinguish. Because the oracle is dangerous, not dangerous like warriors, dangerous like those who name what the powerful would prefer remain unnamed. The most famous oracle in the ancient world was the Pythia at Delphi. For over 1,000 years, from the 8th century, she sat on her tripod above a chasm in the earth, breathed vapours that opened her to the divine, and spoke prophecies that shaped the course of empires. Kings travelled across the known world to ask her questions. Should we go to war? Will this alliance hold? What does the future hold for my kingdom? And she answered. Not in riddles, though that is what history remembers. She answered with clarity, terrifying those who heard her, because she told them what they did not want to know. She named the consequences of their choices before they made them. She saw patterns they could not see, and for that she was both revered and feared. But here is what most people do not understand about the oracle at Delphi. She was not chosen for her wisdom. She was chosen because she could hold the god's voice without being destroyed by it. The prophecies she spoke were not her own thoughts. They were perceptions that moved through her, pattern recognition operating at a frequency most human beings cannot access. She saw because she was built to see, and that seeing cost her everything. She lived apart. She could never marry, never have children, never participate in ordinary life, because once you have been opened to prophecy, once you have learned to perceive what is coming, you can never close that capacity again. You are changed, and the change is permanent. Sound familiar? You did not choose to see patterns. You were born perceiving them. As a child, you knew when your parents' marriage was ending before they admitted it to themselves. You knew which friendships would betray, which teachers would fail, which paths would lead to destruction. And you learned very quickly that naming what you saw earned you punishment, not gratitude. You were told you were negative, that you created problems where none existed, that your intuition was paranoia, your foresight was pessimism, and your accuracy was coincidence. And so you learned to stay silent, to carry what you knew in isolation, to watch the endings unfold whilst pretending surprise. This is Cassandra's curse. The Trojan princess who Apollo gave the gift of prophecy and then, when she refused his advances, was cursed so that no one would ever believe her. She saw the fall of Troy. She warned her people. She told them not to bring the wooden horse inside the city walls, and they dismissed her as mad. They called her hysterical, delusional, and cursed. And when everything she prophesied came to pass, when Troy burned exactly as she said it would, no one apologized. No one acknowledged that she had been right all along. They simply moved on to the next disaster, leaving her to carry the weight of unheeded warning. You know this weight. You have carried it your entire life. The exhaustion of watching people walk toward harm you can see clearly, whilst they accuse you of imagining it. The loneliness of being the only one who perceives the pattern. The grief of being proven right in ways you never wanted to be right about. And the deepest wound of all, the knowledge that even when they finally see what you saw, even when the ending you predicted arrives exactly as you described it, they will not remember that you warned them. They will not credit your sight. They will simply find the next person to ignore. This is not an INFJ personality quirk. This is the oracle's structural position. You stand at a threshold between what is and what is coming. You perceive patterns most people cannot access because they are too close to their own desires, too invested in outcomes they hope for, too committed to narratives they need to be true. You see, because you are not embedded in the same way, and that distance, that capacity to perceive without the distortion of personal investment, is both your gift and your curse. Because people do not want to know what is coming, they want to believe the story they tell themselves. And you are the one who names the ending before they are ready to hear it. The oracle at Delphi was shut down by the Christian Emperor Theodosius I. He declared all pagan oracles closed. The Pythia's voice was silenced. The temple fell into ruin. And for over 1,500 years that silence held. But here is what empires never understand. You cannot destroy an archetype by destroying its carriers. The oracle is not a person, it is a pattern, and patterns persist. The voice that was silenced at Delphi returned in medieval mystics who prophesied inconvenient truths and were burned as heretics. It returned in women accused of witchcraft because they knew things they should not know. It returned in every person who has ever spoken what the prevailing order needed to remain unspoken. And it returns now in you. But here is where we must enter the shadow. Because there is a version of the oracle that has fallen into corruption, and refusing to name it would dishonour everything this channel stands for. The shadow of the oracle is prophecy as control. It is using foresight to manipulate rather than to serve. It is speaking doom, not because you genuinely see it, but because doom-saying gives you power. Because being the one who warned makes you special. Because I told you so becomes the only way you know how to feel valuable. This shadow whispers that your worth lies in being right. If people would just listen to you, everything would be fine. That your persecution is proof of your importance. That you are Cassandra, noble and wronged, whilst everyone else is blind and foolish. This is poison, and it corrupts the gift from the inside. The integrated oracle speaks to serve, not to prove. They warn because warning might help, not because warning makes them feel superior. They understand that their sight is for the collective, not for their own validation, and they know deeply that some people will not hear, no matter how clearly you speak. That prophecy is an offer, not a command. That you cannot force someone to see what they are not ready to perceive. The shadow oracle needs to be believed. The integrated oracle offers what they see and then steps back, understanding that each person must walk their own path, even when that path leads exactly where you said it would. Jung understood this. He wrote about the inflation that comes from touching archetypal energy. When you access something larger than your personal self, prophecy, healing, deep knowing, there is always the temptation to identify with it, to believe that you are special because you carry it, to use the gift as proof of your superiority rather than as a responsibility. The oracle who has fallen into this shadow becomes insufferable. They speak not to help, but to demonstrate how right they are. They collect prophecies like trophies. They keep score of how many times they warned and were ignored. They build an entire identity around being the lone voice of reason in a world of fools. And here is the truly difficult part. This shadow often emerges from real persecution. You were ignored, you were dismissed, you were called dramatic when you were being accurate. The world did gaslight you into doubting your own perception. And so the shadow becomes a defense. If I am always right, if I can prove my prophecies, then I cannot be hurt again. If I make my accuracy an identity, I have a value that cannot be taken from me. But this is a trap, because once your worth becomes dependent on being right, you will start needing people to fail so you can be vindicated. You will start speaking doom, not because you see it, but because you need it. And at that point, the gift has become its own opposite. You are no longer the oracle. You are the one who uses prophecy as a weapon. The other shadow is martyrdom, the endless lament of no one ever listens to me, the identity built around being Cassandra, noble and wronged. This shadow collects evidence of dismissal. It keeps a running tally of every time someone ignores your warning and suffers the consequence. It turns prophecy into suffering and suffering into specialness, and it refuses the possibility that sometimes, even when you are right about the pattern, speaking the pattern is not the most helpful thing you can do. Because here is what the shadow oracle never learns. Not all prophecy needs to be voiced. Not every ending you see needs to be named. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is hold what you know in silence and let people walk their own path. Sometimes warning them changes nothing except your own sense of moral superiority. Sometimes they need to learn through experience, not through being told. And sometimes your role is not to prevent the disaster, but to be there when it arrives. To help them make meaning of what just happened, to show them that the ending you saw was not random but a pattern, and patterns can be understood. This is the difference between the oracle who serves and the oracle who controls. One speaks when speaking might serve. The other speaks to prove they were right. One holds their sight with humility, understanding that prophecy is a burden as much as a gift. The other weaponizes their sight, using it to feel superior. One knows that being believed is not the point, serving is. The other needs to be believed because being believed is the only way they know how to matter. Integration means learning to discern when to speak and when to hold. It means understanding that your sight is accurate, but your interpretation might not be complete. It means recognizing that people are allowed to make choices you can see will harm them, and your job is not to prevent harm, but to remain present when harm arrives. It means letting go of the need to be vindicated, letting go of "I told you so," accepting that sometimes you will warn, be dismissed and be proven right, and no one will ever acknowledge it. And that is not injustice. That is the oracle's path. You speak because speaking is your nature, not because speaking guarantees an outcome. Cassandra was not cursed because she was wrong. She was cursed because she was right in ways that made her unbearable to be around. Think about what it would be like to live with someone who always knows the worst possible outcome and cannot stop naming it, who watches you make choices and tells you in detail how they will destroy you, who sees the ending of every beginning and speaks it aloud before you have even started. This is not wisdom, this is its own kind of violence, because it denies people the possibility of discovery. It robs them of the chance to find their own way. It makes you the God who knows, whilst they are reduced to children who must be warned. The integrated oracle knows this. They speak when asked. They offer perspective when it serves. They warn when warning might actually change something. But they do not prophesy doom as a way of life. They do not make their entire identity about being the one who sees disaster coming. They understand that prophecy is contextual, relational, and must be offered with care. That the gift of sight is only a gift when it is used in service of another's becoming, not in service of your own need to be right. So what does it mean to carry this in the modern world? What does it mean to be the oracle in an age that pathologizes foresight and calls pattern recognition anxiety? It means first that you must learn to trust your sight without needing others to validate it. The oracle who requires belief will spend their life in anguish, because most people will not believe you. Most people cannot hear prophecy until it has already come to pass. This is not because they are stupid, it is because they are embedded in the story in ways you are not. They need to believe in the best possible outcome because hope is what keeps them moving. Your sight, however accurate, threatens that hope, and so they will dismiss you, not because you are wrong, but because you are right in ways they are not yet able to bear. This is the oracle's loneliness. You see clearly, but you see alone. And the only way to survive this is to stop needing your accuracy to be acknowledged, to speak when speaking serves, and then release the outcome, to understand that prophecy is an offering, not a demand, that you are not responsible for what others do with what you tell them. You are only responsible for the integrity of your sight and the compassion with which you speak it. It means, second, that you must find those who can hear. Not everyone is deaf to prophecy. Some people recognize sight when they encounter it, who understand that your warnings come from pattern recognition, not negativity, who ask you what you see because they trust your perception. These are your people, the ones who do not need you to prove your sight, who believe you the first time, who understand that the oracle's voice is valuable precisely because it names what others cannot perceive. Find them. Build with them, because the oracle who speaks only to those who dismiss them will eventually stop speaking, and that silence harms everyone. It means, third, that you must learn when to speak and when to hold. This is the oracle's lifelong work, discerning which prophecies serve and which merely satisfy your need to be right, learning to feel the difference between a warning that might change something and a warning that is only your own fear speaking. Understanding that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is hold what you know and let people discover it themselves, because not all knowledge is helpful before its time, and forcing knowledge on those who are not ready is its own form of violence. The oracle at Delphi did not prophesy unbidden. People came to her. They asked, and only then did she speak. This is the model. You are not here to force sight on those who do not want it. You are here to offer it when it is sought, to be the one people come to when they are ready to hear what is coming, to hold your sight with enough steadiness that when the moment arrives and someone finally asks, "What do you see?" you can answer with clarity and compassion. And this is how the oracles win, not by being believed, not by preventing disaster, not by forcing people to hear what they are not ready to perceive. They win by persisting, by still being here when the empire that tried to silence them has fallen, by carrying the capacity to see through the ages when seeing was dangerous, punishable, and grounds for execution. The oracle at Delphi was shut down, but prophecy did not end. It returned in different forms, carried by different people, adapted to different contexts. Because the pattern itself cannot be destroyed, the seer is not a historical accident. It is an archetypal necessity, and you are living proof. Rome tried to silence the oracles. The church burned the prophets. Empires have spent millennia attempting to control who gets to speak the truth and when. And yet the pattern persists, because people keep needing those who can see, because crises keep arriving that require someone to name them before they fully manifest, because the work of the oracle, speaking what others cannot yet perceive, is essential to collective survival, and so the oracles keep returning. In therapists who name family patterns before they repeat, in analysts who see economic collapse before markets crash, in friends who tell you the truth about relationships you are not ready to leave, in INFJs who perceive endings whilst everyone else is still celebrating beginnings. You are part of that returning. Every time you trust your sight, even when others dismiss it. Every time you speak truth with compassion instead of superiority. Every time you warn because warning might serve, not because warning makes you feel special. Every time you hold what you know with humility, understanding that prophecy is a burden as much as a gift. You are the oracle returning. You are proof that what they tried to silence could not be destroyed. You are carrying sight the world desperately needs, even as it tells you that you are too negative, too intense, too much. They tried to silence the oracles. They shut down Delphi. They burned the prophets. They called the seers mad and locked them away. But the voice keeps returning, because truth keeps needing to be spoken, because patterns keep needing to be named, because someone has to stand at the threshold between what is and what is coming, and translate for those who cannot see. If this video has named something you have carried in silence, I want to know. When did you first realize you could see endings before they began? What cost has your sight exacted? And have you found those who can hear you? Tell me in the comments. Your testimony helps others realize they are not paranoid, not dramatic, not wrong. They are oracles, and the world needs what they see. Subscribe if you want to continue exploring this territory. This is power and myth. This is where your sight is not pathology, it is inheritance. This is where you learn to carry prophecy with dignity instead of being destroyed by it. You are part of something here. Until next time, find your power, know your myth,